Started. So again, my name is Larry Graves. I've been with the Wisconsin State Approving Agency since October. Previous to that, I was with the UW colleges. Previous to that, I was at UW Stout. Former certifying official, former uh, BA work study student, Air Force veteran, utilized Chapter 30 to fund my undergraduate education, used the WDVAs. For those of you who've been around, remember those grants that we used to do for students. I did that previous to what is now the Wisconsin GI Bill. So many years with this, been in the student records business for some time. So it's been a great ride, and very happy to be with these folks right now. So I'll let them introduce each other, and then we'll get started with the meat of our presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Cook. If you say Cook, like C-O-O-K, C-O-O-K, say it twice, and then you got it right. I have a very difficult last name to pronounce, and so I'll not try to, but it's, yeah, there you have it. I too have been with the State Approving Agency just since October. Before that, I was in the Marines, and before that, I was in high school. So it's been some time. I did most of my my business with the Marines on the West Coast in a little town called Yuma, Arizona, which is not much to write home about, except if you're an attack pilot or a fighter pilot, and then it's heaven on earth. So because they got the weather and the ranges, it's fantastic. So if anybody in here is thinking about becoming a fighter pilot in the Marines or the Navy, go to Yuma. Take my word for it. I'm going to talk with you here in just a couple of minutes about our compliance surveys, when we talk about what it is, who we are and what we do here at the State Approving Agency. But other than that, I'm going to pass the microphone off to my good friend, Sebastian Walters.
Hello, folks. I know most of you guys here from the last couple of years, and we got big changes this year, so we are going to make your lives easier this year. So we got a lot of surprises in store for everybody. So I'm going to hand the mic back off to Larry, and we'll get the show on the road. If everybody needs to stand up, do some jumping jacks, work off to lunch, now's your time to do it.
So like our predecessors, Rob and I are splitting the state of Wisconsin, and we're pretty much doing what has been done in the past, nothing creative here. So for all of you, can see where the majority of the population is in the state of Wisconsin. You're looking at it right there. All right. So when we talk about approvals, we talk about the best way to do this, and I don't know if this really does it justice, but we play with a lot of people. So ultimately, the Veterans Administration is number one, and then with the central office, and we report through the regional processing office in St. Louis, coming down with our relationship with Jennifer Lancer, our ELR. We work with school certifying officials, obviously, but then we also work with other state agencies. We also work with what is formerly known as the EAB board, right? Educational Approval Board, which is now part of DSPS. So Department of Safety and Professional Services. Those are for those of you who don't know, all the private schools in the state of Wisconsin have to be approved through them. And then we also work with this agency with the beauty schools and other NCDs out there in the state. We also work with, Sebastian works very closely with the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards. And then we also work with the high schools, so those students who are eligible for Chapter 35 benefits, they're eligible turning 18, and they can be in their senior year, so then we also work with DPI as well for those students. And then lastly, we work with Matt, who will be presenting here later this afternoon, internally with the VBRC. So these are our players, and we work very closely, and it can be challenging at times because there are so many players. But we're learning again, and our relationship with Jennifer is growing, and so we're getting there. So again, we're going to talk about approvals. We're going to talk about the things that we do, right? So we talk about the approvals. Probably one of the things that, depending upon your institution, either you love or you hate. We're going to talk about compliance surveys, and probably all have the same opinion about that. And then lastly, Sebastian will talk about working with the apprenticeships and OJTs. Really another component of, so all of you all are probably familiar with using GI Bill benefits for going to school, right? However, students or veterans can also use them for apprenticeships and on-the-job training, and Sebastian will talk about that as well. So let's talk about the catalog approvals. So when we're doing a catalog approval, the best way to think about it is, so back in the day, for me and many of you out there, if you recall, we used to print, and some of you probably still do. You used to print a catalog, right? And so when you think about signing up for the next semester, or you're thinking about going to a school, they probably handed you a catalog and said, well, here's all of our offerings. And this catalog not only had all the curriculum, the programs that were available, but also the courses and financials information and the calendar information. And and it was all published. And of course, it went on a date the next day because something changed. But it was published and it was handed out, and many times, they were printed, and then admissions offices would have stacks of them hidden away because we need them, and this is what we use for recruiting. And then at the end of the academic year, people are like, oh, we probably ordered too many. Anyway, it was, many of you have now migrated to an electronic format, and we recognize that. And many of you have, some of you have purchased software to accomplish this. And you can print out bits and pieces of it, and you can capture that information electronically very easy. But then there are some other components that are not as easy to capture. And sometimes that can be the catalog that you get does not have the financials information. It does not have an academic calendar in there. What are some of the other things that we've seen that isn't always in there? It talks about records. Yeah, like conduct, academic, non-academic misconduct. Many times because of the way that that's always changing and evolving for good reasons, maybe that's published separately. But back in the day, it used to all be in one. So these are the components then that we're looking for, and they're all up here. And again, if you can think back when you went to school, they were all published in one publication. And these are the things that we need, that the VA requires by law, that we need to work up. And then if you can think about the programs, at least, as we're capturing your programs, your degree programs, your certificates, your diplomas, that information then is ultimately going to flow into VA once, so that you can properly certify those students. So if you're thinking back and you're like, gosh, maybe that's why these programs aren't being populated correctly, it's probably because we haven't worked up a catalog for you in a while. And maybe, so we know that titles change, we know that programs fall off, new programs are added, and this is the way we do this, and this is how we stay on top of it. So again, any questions to this? Yes. So what we're asking is that you, as a school official, click on each one of the save them electronically, and if you want to throw them all into a massive PDF for us, I can work with that, because I can catalog off of that. But the components, and when you get to that point, you can contact us and we can walk you through that. But I recognize that you're all moving to electronic format. However, we still need, but we can work with a massive PDF. We've done that, but the components need to be there. And and this is the way then we're going to archive that as well, right? So that we can, if anything is ever called into question, we can look back to 2015 and say, oh, here's the information, and this is what it looked like. This is what a student was paying. This is what the calendar looked like. Yep. Other questions? Comment?
The requirement is that there has to be something from the school that's official from the school that details it. That if historically that's been the catalog, that's it's signed by the appropriate people, and the Board of Regents throw some holy water on it and that sort of thing, and off you go and you got a catalog. But if you're going to, the requirement is something from the school that details your programs and policies, that if and when we have to go back and look at those programs and policies from 4 years ago, because it changes, we're able to say, well, that's the official school position for this particular thing, right? So whatever format that kind of comes in, historically that's been a catalog, we've moved to PDF. The trick is it can't be changeable, right? So it can't be an HTML, because HTML, my daughter can change HTML, and she's still in elementary school. So I can't, but she can. So that the idea is it's got to be something that is permanent and official and can't be changed. Does that make sense?
And PDF is recognizable, and we can open that. We can work with that. Right. So if you can assemble it, and sometimes maybe it's not you, but we worked with school officials, and they worked with their IT area, and they were able to do them for them. And so again, we recognize based on your position that you may not be able to do that, but chances are, and if you need some assistance, and if you need one of us to talk to an administrator, by all means, give me a call.
I'd mentioned that when it used to be printed, then the day after already changes. So that still can happen when it's electronic as well. So do you want us to keep sending you updates every time we have an update? Because that could get ridiculous.
Right. So back in the day, if you recall, then there would be addendums, right? We would create addendums to the catalog, and they would somehow be all catalog, archived appropriately. I do recognize that there are always changes, and again, it depends on the change, but sometimes policy changes and things like that are very subtle. I get that, but when we're talking about programs and let's say that there's a change to misconduct, I mean, those are some big things that, and then please call us and we'll talk to you. We can talk it through. And so we can individually learn about, okay, so what has changed, and maybe we can wait based on the date. We'll just wait until the next academic year and capture it from you then. Question?
Our school just went from a 2-year to a 1-year catalog now. That's on the undergrad. And I could work with my OIT office to do a PDF. That's fine. But our graduate program, no catalog. So what do I do with that?
So in those situations, we still need the components. So the graduate school policies, right, which are very different from the undergraduate policies. Some policies are going to be the same, like academic misconduct, non-academic misconduct are probably the same. But yeah, and for your programs, what we need is that information. And my guess, it's probably residing in HTML. It's probably residing on a web page, and the graduate school is probably updating these web pages and somehow is putting dates to them as titles change, as degree requirements change, that they're saying as of fall 18, the requirements now for MBA program is this. If you were admitted in fall 16, you were under this. There's a record of that, and then wherever this is lying, this is the information that we need. And many times you can take the web pages and have, whether it's you or somebody, can convert that to a PDF. And then that's what we need. Again, we need the components here. And again, to the courses as well, right? Courses change. Titles change of courses. We need that information. And again, this is the requirements, and then this is what we need for to do our work as defined by our contract and by law. These are the information that we need from you. We're keeping on top of it, and we will do a better job in the future, and we will stay on top of this. This is on us now. Any other questions? So we have a checklist, and if you ever want to know more about this, we can But again, if you can see at the bottom, we're referencing different things. We'll reference undergraduate catalog, a graduate catalog, student handbook, with the academic, non-academic misconduct policies. Sometimes we're referencing an external calendar. Sometimes we're referencing an addendum for financial aid or for finances. We will list every one of these. If it's outside of a catalog or outside, we will list them appropriately here. I think I was doing a workup for Midstate, and I think I have 6 different items here. And it was just, and nothing wrong with it. I'm going to account for it, and I'm recognizing that they're not going to be all together, but we will have them accounted for, and then I will list them out. A little bit more work for me, but that's fine. It's my job. So part of this then, if you recall, for those of you who have been doing this for a while, you will recognize, you probably have done this in the past where we provide you the form and we want you to, what they used to call paginate. I don't know, is that still a word now? Anyway, we're really telling us what page number the policies are on, what page number your courses are on, what page number your degree programs are. Rob and I are going to now do this. We're going to take this work on because if you can provide us, and this is how we're going to work with you, you can provide us a catalog. We can, using Control F for those of you who work using Control F, we can easily find these things. And we're doing it very quickly and we're finding it. We're going to be very accurate. Because oftentimes when we would ask the school official, go ahead and paginate this, we'd have to go back and forth, or Jennifer would catch something and then we'd end up doing it anyway. So we'll take it on, and then we will go through the page numbers and we'll record it. And then we will send it back to you, and then we would ask you to verify. So we'll do the workup. We're going to ask you to verify. Again, because we're getting checked on this, and we want to make sure it's accurate. And we're going to work with you. And if something is missing, then we will ask you, can you provide us this information? We're just working with Mary on this. Questions? The goal is really every academic year, because things change, right? Your offerings change. Many of the UWs now are looking at changing programs. The colleges are going with the comprehensives. Things are changing. Things are evolving, and it's the only way to stay on top of it. And it's a requirement is to really do it. And that way, you will always be accurate with your students, and information will always be accurately displayed for students as well. You put out a call for these, right, to the schools? So we will do this again, right. We will do, again, it is our job. We will do a better job of that. And so be looking for an email from Sebastian. We'll blast this out. And then we will work with you. If you have any questions, by all means, contact us. We will work with you. It's the same 2902. That's same thing. We're asking for the page numbers, right? We're going to do that, right? And then we're gonna email it back to you and say, please verify this information. Do your scan, sign it, and then we'll move forward from that. Yes. It's going to go to the school certifying official. Yes. Email the notification will to the school certifying official. Other questions? Am I missing anything, guys? Tell me.
There's a lot of, if I may, there's a lot of, can you all hear me okay? There's a lot of approvals that are out there. I found one just the other day from 2011. The last time it had been done in 2011. So those programs need to be updated. So if you find yourself, if you take a look and say, when's the last time we've had our programs approved at the state approving agency, and you see that it's before like 2015, give us a call. Give us a call, because there's a lot of schools, and there's Larry and I doing it. So we're doing the best we can to keep up, but there's a lot out there from deemed approved and all the rest that are still sort of holdovers, and I've seen 3 in the last week that are 2011, and so they all need to be redone. The difference being is that we're not going to send you back an email with 9,000 forms to fill out. We're going to send you back an email and say, hey, does this look about right? and then you all sign for it. You're signing for the school, right? You're saying, hey, this is true and correct to the best of my knowledge, and this is the information that the University of whatever puts out. But the idea is we're hoping we can speed things up a little bit this way and take some of the paperwork burden off of you all, because we know what we're looking for.
And again, Control F.
Quick question. So Upper Iowa University has 5 locations in Wisconsin.
Yes.
We all follow the same parameters.
Yes.
Do we have to have 5 approvals for this, or can it just be 1?
It's going to be to each facility,
Okay.
because at each facility, so I was just up at Wausau.
Yes.
The Wausau offerings are very different from the Milwaukee offerings, which are different from the. So while I understand that your policies
Yep.
are probably a blanket across the institution,
Correct.
your programs and some of the uniqueness certificates and other things are all to the facility.
Okay.
So, and I've worked with Chad on some different things too. So.
Okay. So you are working with Chad. Perfect.
Right. Right. Because, well, right. Right. Because the policies are the same, right? Your overarching policies are your requirements for degree and everything like that, but it's just the offerings in each center has some uniqueness to it. Question.
How often will you be doing the catalogs? How many years in between?
We want to stay on this annually, so we want this to, the intent is to stay on top of it. Again, things are changing. We know the landscape of higher education out there is changing, and this is the only way to really stay on top of it. And this is regardless if you're private or a technical college or UW. We know the landscape is changing, programs are changing. We want to stay on top of it, and it's a requirement. Turn it over to Rob.
Thank you very much, Larry. We wanted to put a slide up here that has a lot of writing on it, so that you all would have something to read. As I sit and talk with you a little bit, if you're an individual in here or your school has had a compliance survey in the last 3 years, can you raise your hands? All right, so quite a number. If you've never been the subject of a compliance survey that you know of, can you raise your hands? It's not pejorative, believe me. Okay, good, because so Larry and I are new to this. This is our first year doing this. This is our we are a branch, if you will. We are an arm or the agents of the federal VA when we're doing these compliance surveys, and of course all the schedule is made up by what we call VACO, or the VA central office, and they have a formula that tells you which schools you're going to go look at every year. And it's not just us. So Larry and I do the compliance surveys. Sometimes if it's a big job like Wisconsin, Madison, where they have so many students, we'll bring Sebastian along with us to help shoulder the load. But there's also another compliance section for that works out of the state, that's working out of the office there in St. Louis, or Minneapolis, that are actual federal workers that are doing compliance. So those compliance survey specialists that do that. So it's not just us. The idea behind it is the old adage that with money comes oversight, right? So with money comes oversight, and everybody knows with the federal government, if you're going to take some of the federal government's money, somebody's going to come and take a look at whether or not the federal government's money or the taxpayers' money is being spent appropriately, right? So that's the idea behind compliance surveys, and that's all we're doing is that the compliance survey, or sorry, that the school certifying officials are familiar with the rules, familiar with the regulations and the programs that govern that we use in order to certify the students, that the certifications are being done correctly and specifically for the right amounts. And when we find errors or what we call findings, and there's all kinds of different names for it, but the idea is then we sort of take that back. We try to educate the very best that we can to the school certifying official or whatever person is there that cares to listen. We try to work our way through with what we found to make sure that the mistake doesn't happen again. And if we don't know the answer, we know who to go to find the answer. And so so that's what we do is we'll work through that. There's things change all of the time. For example, what we're finding recently that is changing quite a bit is this, or what we found recently that's changed is, are there school certifying officials in here also, or is it mainly registrars? I just want to make sure. What? Oh, all SCOs. Okay, so it's okay. Very good. So all SCOs. Is everybody familiar with the idea that you have to report when a student graduates? Okay. All right. Good. Then y'all are on the ball, because that's one of the main, or one thing that we've been finding at the schools we've been going to is that folks, for the most part, don't know that they're supposed to report graduation, and that, or perhaps it's also fair to say it's not being done. So we go back in and show them how to report graduation and clean that up a little bit. Interestingly, for a program that's been around since 1947, right? The VA never tracked whether or not anybody was actually successful at the program and graduated. So recently, I'm going to say within the last number of years, several years, they've decided, hey, maybe it'd be a good idea whether we figure out whether or not this program is working. And so they've been trying to track graduation instead of just people that left school and the rest. So again, another list of items up here of things that we're looking for. To the very best of our ability, we're going to try to determine, based on the facts that we can find, that there's any deviations from the requirements that are out there. It's a simple way of saying, hey, is everybody, Larry and I both go in under the assumption that every single person out there is doing the very best that they can with what little God gave them. And so we know that we're going to find some errors. And that's okay. No big deal. That's we're hoping to help. We're hoping to be the people that are that can help resolve those errors. Nobody wants to see some of our young people, our veterans out there, not get the appropriate amount of money, and nobody wants to see one of our veterans out there get a bill for something because we're certifying them incorrectly and the rest. So we try to help keep it straight, and that's the idea behind compliance surveys. As far as I know, nobody's lost their birthday yet due to one of the results of our compliance surveys, and nobody's dog tags get bent over it either. So it's going to be okay. We put this up here so that y'all would have an eye chart, so that, like we do in the service, we can say, this slide is completely unreadable, but if you could read it, it would tell you this. No, I'm kidding. This is the actual form. This is the 22 DAC 1934. In other words, there really is a method to our madness, and this form, believe it or not, tells us all of the things that we're supposed to be looking for on a compliance survey. Okay, these are all the things that we're out there looking at. And so if you care, and you probably don't, but we do. But if you care, these are the things that when we go into your records, and thank you for all of those who I've worked with, Larry and I have worked with this year so far, has been very forthcoming with the records, have been very, very helpful, and we appreciate it. But when we're in there looking for your records, we're looking for some very specific things. We're going to come in and try to be as painless as possible. We're going to make as small a footprint as possible. We're not going to ask to use your copying machines anymore. We're just going to scan it. Everything you show us, we're going to leave when we, with the exception of a couple of pieces of paper, but we're not taking student files with us. Okay, I should say we're not taking hard copy student files with us. We're going to scan it all, and it's going to stay on our servers. We're very familiar with the concept and the requirements for protection of personally identifiable information, and we're going to take care of that. So our goal here is to come in, execute our responsibility of, with money comes oversight, educate the best that we can as we continue, both Larry and I continue to gain experience. We're going to educate the very best that we can, and we're going to come in, make it happen, and leave as quickly as we can, knowing that all of you are overworked and underpaid to start with, and the last thing you want to see is somebody from the feds coming in and peeking at your record. So appreciate your understanding. Any questions about compliance surveys? Liars. Go ahead. We can work with anything. Okay? We can work with anything. Now, what we found is typically schools are hesitant to give us access to their electronic files. And I understand that. I mean, there's a law that says that we, as agents of the federal government for the purposes of these surveys, have the right to access to the VA students' files, right? There's a law that says that, and I'm not making this up. I make up a lot of stuff, but I'm not making that up. But we don't have access to the other students' files, and I understand that schools will sometimes be hesitant to give us that access, despite the fact that we are sort of trained and careful with PII. So typically, what people will do is they'll print those out. And one day we'll all pay price in purgatory for the number of trees that we kill, but we don't do it twice. We scan it before we leave instead of making another copy. Historically, yes, we have worked with electronic files before. It's not very common yet, but we anticipate it becoming more and more common, like the electronic catalogs and whatnot. But as long as we can get the information and then take a copy of it for our records, then giddy up. We're easy to work with, or we're trying to be easy to work with, shall we say. Yes, ma'am. A drive is fine, right? A drive is fine as long as it's a PDF, if you will, if it's an electronic copy, or if we're going through it, you give us access to something and we can pull it off of that drive and save it ourselves, we'll do that.
Because I know, speaking as a registrar, that when we share records of people who are not veterans, we are required by law to keep a record of that access.
Of course.
So if we give you the PDF,
Mhm.
we need to keep track that we gave you that in the event of like a breach.
And we will always ask for those that haven't experienced one of our delightful visits yet, we will always ask for a record of a non-veteran student, what we like to call a similarly circumstanced person not receiving VA benefits, right? The idea being we want to verify that the veterans and the other students are being charged the same amount of money, right? So, essentially that they're being treated the same, shall we say, is the better way to say it. So we do ask for a copy of that. Typically, we don't take that entire record, though. We'll take bits and pieces of that. So we destroy that. We upload all this information to another program that's within the Department of Veterans Affairs. All right. I'm sorry. 7 years. Evidently, the answer to that question is, her question was, how long do we keep the student's information before we destroy it? 7 years.
And why I ask is, yesterday I spent my day in a workshop on the GDPR, and so it turns out this is probably one of the things that you just might want to make that document available when you come, so that we can save that. That tells us if they come to ask us, when we gave you this is your plan to destroy.
Can you tell me later what the GDPR is? Okay, you're gonna have to tell
General Data Protection. That's a new. It's a 2-year-old law from the EU that went into effect with penalties May 25th.
Okay.
EU, Europe.
European Union?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it affects us all.
He sits across the way from us and has a rough life. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll come to you.
My question is, piggybacking off of Mary Carr, what you said, when you retained them for 7 to 10 years, are institutions also responsible?
No.
Thank you.
Is that your responsibility ends at what, certainly for as far as the VA goes, as far as the Veterans Affairs for that particular student, it's 3 years. And there's years from the what's the term? Time of completion. Okay, time of completion or last day of attendance, 3 years. Okay. Now, our experience through compliance surveys is that your state laws and state law for the University of Wisconsin system and others is typically longer than that. An example being the transcripts are indefinite. You know, that sort of thing seems to be a fairly common thing. But for the, you know, what you're signing up to with the VA is 3 years from time of completion or last day of attendance. Okie dokie. Well, then we start again. Yeah, I mean, then I'd say that if a young person leaves school and then comes back within you know, outside of 3 years, then as far as the VA goes, you're starting all over again. And you know, you may see that again in the future with, right, sure, and it may be more so in the future because of the forever GI Bill where it doesn't expire. So that's a possibility. But yeah, that's the, you know, we certainly we don't want you to keep things any longer than you absolutely have to. But the rule is, hey, no kidding, 3 years. You'll see that when we send out our delightful, hi, this is me from, we're going to come visit. It'll say this is the period that we're going to look at, and it's typically 3 years from the, it's 3 years from the last grading period is what we're looking at there. So we just started the 3 years ending in May with May's graduations. Yes, ma'am.
After 3 years?
It's your if it's your university. The short answer to that is you can do anything you want as long as we have the ability to see the records up to 3 years from the data last. Does that make sense? Okay. So whether they're scanned or not, and because there's nothing, as far as I know, there's nothing that says that it has to be a paper record. There's nothing that says it has to be a paper record. Hey, this is fun. I never talked about compliance surveys in front of such a non-hostile crowd, and you know, there's nobody carrying pitchforks and torches. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, another question is.
You can give her the microphone. Hey, that's right.
Do we have to have a new compliance letter or a certificate of eligibility?
Absolutely. Yes, if they're gone, if they leave school and come back after 1 year, then you'd have to have a new certificate of eligibility. Okie dokie. Because we don't know what they did in that last year, right? I mean, it's quite possible that they could have gone to a different school and used some eligibility or whatever. Well, correct. But yes, if they leave and come back, yeah, then you have to have another COE. More questions? Well, you've been a great crowd. Tip your wait staff, everyone. Thanks very much. Over to Sebastian.
So my presentation is mainly for the tech colleges here, but everybody else feel free to listen or get up and leave. It's up to you. So occasionally you're going to have a veteran running up to you saying, hey, I'm an apprenticeship. I need you to certify me. Don't. Send them to me, and I will point them in the right direction. So like the SEOs, the companies have what's called the COs, which are certifying officials, and the certifying officials will do the certification for their GI Bill. Now, depending on what chapter they can get a stipend just for the Chapter 33 that can help offset for the books and supplies. And if they have entitlement for the Wisconsin GI Bill and whatever your guys' policy says, that's how they can pay for the related training. But you guys are not the ones who primarily certify students for apprenticeships or on-the-job training for the, well, actually apprenticeships only, no OJT, for related training. So if you have any questions, just send them to me and I'll take them and get them pointing in the right direction. So much like school, they get what's called an MHA, which is their BAH that you guys are familiar with. It's their housing allowance, determined by their zip code. And for each level that they go up, they get a lower bit of their GI Bill until they run out of entitlements. So I'm not going to bore you with all this.
Oh, did I hit something? I'm sorry. What?
All right, have a good weekend.
What did I do? There. I'm sorry.
So the big difference between apprenticeships and OJTs, like I said before, is OJTs don't have related training, so it's a shorter period and they're strictly more on the job, and we try to stay away from those because they're pains. And everybody loves regulations, so if you guys get bored and you want some good reading material to help you fall asleep tonight, you can look into these. So here's the big difference here for registered apprenticeships: not less than 2,000 hours of full-time work experience, and they have to have a minimum of 144 paid-related training. So that'd be with you guys at the tech colleges, learning whatever they learn. And we're not going to bore you with this, but the big point is right here is that food service workers, salesmen, and unskilled labor positions, we will not certify because the VA does not recognize that as proper education. So that includes your bartenders too, because we get asked that all the time. So in Wisconsin, I deal with a, what's that?
I'm in Ohio. We've actually got a couple schools that started full-blown brewing degrees.
Well, we actually had a cosmetologist apprenticeship that we just got approved. So, I mean, anything's possible if our counterparts over at the Bureau of Apprenticeship approve it first. Then it makes our life easier because they go through the whole minutia of approving everything, and the VA likes it that better. But our big key players here in the state are the JACs, the ABCs, and our industrial service and utility companies. So, questions?
The reason that we talk with you about this a little bit is really threefold. One, because the title of the brief was what are those people at the SAA doing? And this is, believe it or not, this is about it's more than a half of our work, because if you consider the number of colleges in this state and then the number of students that we have within those colleges, there's 3 times that number of apprenticeships in the state. There's all over the place. And all of them have to be approved, and all of them have to be, now there's not 630, there's not each one of them has an apprentice, but in other words, when you call down and say, hey, what do you guys do down there? Yeah, we do a lot of this. The other thing is just more of a professional education on the part of all of the SCOs that are out there that oftentimes we'll hear that that young people don't know. They think the only path for the use of their GI Bill benefits is go to an accredited institution or something along those lines. And the fact is, OJT and or apprenticeships are a very viable solution that are out there for people that want to become skilled in the trades or something along those lines, and they can use it's not the same extent to which they can use their GI Bill benefits, but it's out there and it's available to their use. And the third reason is because it's that we wanted to let you know, for as big of a sort of an operation or big of a business is within the state, the university systems and our school systems are, this is almost just as big. And I had no idea how far-reaching this was with the JACs and the unions and the different programs out there. It is literally statewide in every county and every municipality in the city, or sorry, in the state, has these from state workers on down to plumbers and carpenters and everything else. So if you have young people that are looking for opportunities in the trades, and they're veterans in particular, and even if they're not veterans, give us a call. We'll put you in touch with the right people, because there's a whole nother state agency that does this, as it doesn't relate to veterans. We do the veteran stuff, and others do that. So professional education more than anything else, knowing that few of you will ever be particularly acquainted with this.
But calling you up, Ben, thanks for sending everybody my way, because that helps get them, and they're all happy at the end of the day, so we can point them to the right direction. So. So what Jackie is asking about is how does a veteran student go into the trades or an apprenticeship? So the first thing that we want to make sure that they do is we'll send them to vets.va or eBenefits and or do a paper form 22-1990 to get a certificate of eligibility. And if they've used their GI Bill at a school or something, we make sure that they do a 1995 to change it from the school to there. And what they are required to do is get with the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards. And each region, I think there's 13 different regions, 12 or 13, they have what's called area training reps who go out there and they will sign up a veteran and get them a contract that says, this is what you're going to do, this is how long you're going to do it, this is what you're going to get paid for, and this is your paid and unpaid related training. So after they get their contract and they give their certifying official a copy of that, well, things are changing recently because now the apprenticeships can do online certifications, but generally in the past, they'd send us all the paperwork so that we can track who's where, what, so on and so forth. And that way we can make sure that the veteran doesn't have any delays in their benefits by making sure that they have their 1999s that you guys do online. Well, they had a paper copy, and I'd make sure we go over that. Attach their contracts, attach their Exhibit A, which specifies all their related training, and we'd make sure that St. Louis gets it 3 or 4 times to make sure that the veteran get paid once. Correct. So if you, like Ben knows this because I talk to Ben a lot because they have a lot of unions out in Milwaukee that said, hey, here, go to METC, and these kids don't know what to do. So if they're a veteran student in an apprenticeship, just have them call me and I'll talk to them and put them in contact with their employer or whoever they need to talk to. I have cards, yes.
Give us your telephone number.
867-5309. So, but if we go back to the slide here too, if you guys, we have all of our contact. Okay, I pulled it, Larry. All right, so they can either get a hold of us at the SAA mail here or call WISVets and Matt will answer the phone and direct them to there too. But I do have some cards that we can leave out here for you people to hand out to and point them into the right directions. Well, a lot of times them, right, and going off of what Jackie said, sometimes the employer may not be approved, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not approved because they could be part of a JAC, the Joint Apprenticeship Committee, and they could be having a big committee or the unions representing them. So just have them call me and we'll get them straightened on the right path. This is why I drink a lot.
Give us a call and we'll do the very best that we can to help the young person out. Veteran or not. So I'm just going to give a really quick Ohio perspective on this. So many of our community colleges are now becoming registered sponsor sites for apprenticeships. So some of those school certifying officials are now certifying apprenticeships as well, because some of them are trying to find students. We've got like well over 20,000 apprentices in Ohio. So as our institutions are starting to hear that, they're creating these programs. And I would also say, don't think that apprenticeship is what you thought of as apprenticeship 20 years ago. Our new programs we're creating are advanced manufacturing technology, information technology, pharmacy tech. Those are all apprenticeship programs now that are being taught out of those community colleges. So this is not just carpentry and some type of IBEW, electrical, whatever. It's very different and it's all changing very, very quickly. But that's given them a mechanism now to reach out to a whole different population of regular students and veterans as well. The last thing I would also say is give you, as a department, mad props, because in Ohio, one of the biggest issues we have is the catalog submission issues, because our SAA is really bent on taking paper. So like, for example, last fall, Ohio State had to actually take a hand cart into their SAA with their catalog printed in it to deliver it to them. So we're trying to get changes, and they're slowly starting to change. So I am in utter awe that you are willing to take a PDF, and the rest of you need to know how good you have it for that, because we're not in that situation yet. So thank you.
Any other questions, or would we like to get out of here early? Well, I'm done. Let's update our website with all the latest and greatest. So just the SAA site, not the DVA site.
For those of you who are, we talked about the catalog and the changes, and we talked a little bit about, I brought up changes to your programs, and again, we recognize that the landscape is changing, and you know, historically titles have changed in programs, but we also recognize now more recently that you know, many of you are reevaluating and you may be eliminating programs, and or for example with UW system there's some consolidation that's going on, and so we recognize that, and that is on our radar. And so as you do see these changes and programs do change, and if they're going to be drastic, you know, we're willing to work with you, and we'll make those changes, because again, we want to make sure that you all are able to report accurate information to the VA. It's important. So, any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
All right, real quickly, we're just popping up our website here. We have totally rearranged the website. It's more user-friendly, so instead of going down 14 different rabbit holes to find something that the page is not found, you can now click on I want to, and this is our top stuff here. It makes life easier, but for the state approving agency, we're under benefits, education, and then state approving agency. So all the latest and greatest stuff there with hyperlinks that actually work, and our common useful tools down here at the bottom. So if anybody has any questions, or if you guys want to know who your local CVSO is or TVSO, or who your ATR is for whatever region you guys occupy in your county, we have all that information on there.